Hello, everyone. I'm Adam Pellegrini, Director of the Columbia School of Social Work Writing Center, and I'm excited for today's event, Writing to Lead, a Writing Lives Roundtable. Now I'll pass to our excellent moderator, CSSW Dean Melissa Begg.
Thank you so much, Adam, and welcome everyone to the latest installment of CSSW's Writing Lives Roundtable series. This is a series in which our esteemed faculty and colleagues get to talk about their lives as writers. And so I'm really excited to be here with you. I have four outstanding CSSW colleagues here to talk about our theme for today's session, which is writing to lead. So leaders use writing across different contexts to drive change and innovation, to build community, and to inspire hope. And every day, social workers write to multiple different audiences in ways that advance scholarship, advocacy, education, and practice. And today, we're going to discuss our panel's experiences with writing and leadership and how they came to find their voices. So thank you so much to my superb colleagues, Writing Center Director Adam Pellegrini and Professor Qin Gao for organizing this important panel and for all they do for our community. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. Your presence in this Zoom space affirms that you too see writing as an essential part of social work practice, as well as for advocacy. For example, in securing support for projects that will meaningfully impact the populations whom we serve. And I hope that today's event affords you new insights and strategies for success in your own writing life and to inspire writing that contributes to positive change. So now it's my great pleasure to introduce very briefly our distinguished panelists and then invite them. I'm going to pose a question for them to respond to get us kicked off here. First is Dr. Ana Abraído-Lanza. She's professor of social work and vice dean of our school. She's a scientist who's cross-trained in the social sciences and in public health. She's a leading scholar in Latinx health and behavioral science, an innovator in curriculum development, and an effective advocate for diversity, equity, and inclusion in the academy. A major focus of her research is on analyzing health disparities among Latino communities in the US and exploring key cultural, social, and individual factors that promote health. Her work on the Latino health paradox is very widely cited. And as vice dean of our school, Dr. Abraído-Lanza focuses on all academic research and faculty affairs for our community. Next, we have Dr. Heidi Allen, who's associate professor of social work with a secondary appointment in health policy and management at the Mailman School of Public Health. Over the past decade, Dr. Allen has conducted cutting-edge research on access to healthcare and access to mental health care in America, a passion which she now brings into the emerging field of psychedelic-assisted therapies. Notably, she was a lead investigator on the influential Oregon health insurance experiment. And in addition to having been selected as a Provost Leadership Fellow, Dr. Allen's a Provost Senior Faculty Teaching Scholar and is developing curricula for psychedelic assisted therapy for social workers and for nurses. CSSW just welcomed the second cohort of master students into the psychedelic assisted therapy training program this September. I'm also very pleased to introduce my colleague, Dr. Riana Anderson, Associate Professor of Social Work, who joined us in 2023. A Detroit native, Dr. Anderson is a licensed clinical psychologist whose scholarship addresses applied coping strategies to reduce race-related stress in Black families. One of her primary goals is to create programs, policies, and places which support the mental and physical health of Black youth in urban communities through mental health research and innovation. She came to join us here at Columbia after completing two highly prestigious fellowships, one at Harvard's Hutchins Center for African and African American Research, and another at Stanford's Center for Advanced Study in the Behavioral Sciences. Last, and certainly not least, I am pleased to welcome Dr. Richard Hara, Senior Associate Dean for MSSW Education and Senior Lecturer in the Discipline of Social Work. Dr. Hara's work has focused on support for cancer patients, their caregivers, and those bereaved by cancer. He's presented on cultural competence in oncology social work, end of life and bereavement counseling, and the use of online communication with clients in a clinical context. He's published a book on cancer caregiving, as well as articles on cancer survivorship, domestic violence screening, and intervention issues in the oncology population. He's been the leader of a training grant from the American Cancer Society for MSSW students in clinical oncology social work. So, everyone, I'm delighted that you are all here, and I can't wait to jump into our discussion. So, I'm going to throw out a question for all of you to start. and we can go in any order, but a general question, and then I'll start to delve into our specific topics for today, this writing to lead. But a general question first. What what do you consider to have been or are currently the biggest challenges you faced in your life as a writer? And somebody can jump in, or I will pick on somebody. All
I
right.
know. Well, I
Good.
was
Dr. Anderson,
okay.
yes.
Woo, woo. Okay. I was like, I know the students also know what it feels like to be in class. Like, are they talking to me? Like, do I have to speak? Yes. Okay. So, um, the past year and change has been very challenging to try to get publications accepted. So I've been
Mm,
saying a lot and I've been screaming it and yelling it and typing furiously the little Kermit meme. Like I'm really trying to get in there, and places are not receiving it the way that I think that they used to. And so rejection I would, title that rejection, the season of rejection. What does it mean when you really have something to say and it's not getting to the ears or the eyes of the places that you would want it to get to? And I'm totally happy to unpack that more, but I would title that rejection.
yes. Rejection is a part of every writer's life. Thank you for that. Next, maybe Dr. Allen.
I think that my greatest challenge has always been perfectionism.
Mm,
Um, I really want my first draft to look like my final draft. And when I see what I produce, it immediately triggers all this cascading imposter syndrome, a sense of, I'm not going to be able to do this. It's kind of like a
mm,
panic reaction when it
mhm.
doesn't look like the way that I imagined it would look. And so, you know, it's like, it's actually, it's one of those things that when I worked with a writing coach, it almost felt like therapy, trying to dig at that perfectionism and how the perfectionism got in the way of actually getting started.
Yeah. Yeah. The barrier to begin, for sure. Um, yeah. Dr. Hara, please.
Yeah, I think I can just sort of like add on to Dr. Allen's comment. I think it's interesting. Challenges for me are just getting started and
Yeah.
then knowing when to end, right? When to finish. And it's related to
Yeah.
perfectionism, I think. Before
Yeah.
I get started, I want to know everything. I want to have everything laid out in my mind so that I can just let it all flow
Yeah.
on the page or on the screen, what have you, and do that work. And once you get started, you have something to work with. But
Mhm.
then, at the other end, it's sort of like, okay, am I done yet? How much more can I work on this? And I think what helps me in all of this is just having collaborators, people to
Mm,
sort of vet my writing, my ideas, and things like that, and give me a reality check, another perspective, and to get me through those two critical points. So those are the big challenges that I always face whenever I write. So yeah.
great. Thank you. Dr. Abraído-Lanza.
Yes, I would agree with my colleagues. And for me, I think for me, it's mostly, well, it boils down to two things: time, just making the time to actually sit and write. And the second one is when I approach an article or an idea, a grant, whatever, I feel like there are so many pieces of things that I want to say that sometimes for me, the the biggest challenge, frankly, is just organization. And it helps. So sometimes I just put a bunch of free floating ideas on the computer or a piece of paper, and then I try to organize it later because I think that's just the way my mind works, that I have general things that I want to say, and sometimes just organizing comes later. So for me, that's one of the big challenge is the time and then the organization piece. But I've
Yeah.
learned to, okay, that's just the way my brain works, and I'll figure it out later. So for
Yeah.
me, those are.
Don't fight it. Lean into your own style, I think is another way to say that. That's great. Thank you. And as we think about the theme for today's session, writing to lead, you're all leaders in various ways. As you think about that theme, um, what genres or writing situations come to mind for you, or how would you define writing to lead? How has this title hit you as you were thinking about joining this space? Please jump in.
I'll say for me, some of my writing to lead has been through positions that I've been able to get as I've established expertise.
Mm,
So being part of editorial boards for journals, and then they have kind of a requirement that you submit
yeah.
editorials. That structure has invited me to lead, but for me, most of what I think leading is through the editorial writing process.
Mm,
My empirical work definitely tells a story. It's meant to meet a moment. It's meant to inform policy and be actionable.
mhm,
But where I really get to say what I think about things and bring everything that I know about a topic together has been through writing editorials. And since I received tenure in 2019, I think I've written probably or published like 12 or 13 editorials, which is just an
oh, wow.
opportunity to kind of say, hey, this is something that I want you to know, rather than, which allows you to respond to the moment in a really meaningful way.
And reaching different audiences that way, right? So not just the traditional sort of
Yeah,
publisher.
though I often
Empirical work.
publish in my editorials in health policy journals, which
Hmm.
has an
Okay.
audience that is, kind of the same ones that read my empirical papers, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Really, really good. Thank you. Yeah. Anna, you were going to say something.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to add that when I saw this theme of writing to lead, what came to my mind is leading a creating frameworks and different ways of seeing a problem, a public health issue, a social work issue. So leading the field in thinking, in inquiry, and what I have tried to do in my writing is to really ask questions from where I sit
Hmm.
as a Latina person who has had particular experiences, my particular life experiences that perhaps didn't always match what I was reading in the general scientific and other literature. So when I saw this theme of writing to lead, I associated it with how I have approached my own writing. So when I am seeing articles being published that don't fit how I see things, that's what I have felt where I have made the most impact in terms of trying to explain uh, paradoxes and ways of seeing that I see things differently. So
Hmm.
that's what occurred to me when I saw this major theme.
Yeah. Great. Thank you. Um, Rihanna and Richard, would you like to add something? I'm curious to know what you think.
Yeah, I'll just pop in quickly and say that I feel very privileged that my job is about writing. Like that,
Yeah.
I speak and I write, and that's what my job is about. And I tell all of my mentees, like this is what we were made for. So when I saw the title, it evoked in me the ethos that I already have, which is like I'm leading through the skills that I have. I don't have to do anything extra or different. I am being paid, I'm being respected to think and to write and to speak out these things that I know, right? Like this empiricism, these data, these things that I know, this is what I'm supposed to do. Now, getting jazzy or
Yeah.
creative or making it stick, those are different issues, but
Yeah.
writing in and of itself is me displaying leadership. And I'll say just briefly again that if you're a part of my lab, there are ways that I do challenge you. I say writing for publication is great. And to the points that we've already heard from our colleagues, how do you get it to different hands? How do you make sure that grandma, that someone on the street, that someone who will never get that access to this journal is going to get your point? And that's where leadership in different spaces is really important too.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Thank you. Richard.
Yes, as I was thinking about this question and
Yeah.
just about leadership generally, I guess there are different ways of looking at leadership, right? And to a certain extent, I thought that, well, when I'm working on a writing project, often leadership doesn't come to my mind immediately, but I think leadership in some form or fashion gets expressed in how you approach your writing, how you do the writing. And so I was thinking of a recent writing project, which was working on our school self-study that we have to submit to the Council on Social Work Education for our accreditation as a School of Social Work. And yeah, in terms of the project itself, it's meant to provide an overview of our entire program and, in fact, our school to a certain extent, all of the offices, our curriculum, who our faculty are, and as a single person, obviously, I'm not, the solitary genius pulling this all together. I worked with tremendous colleagues in all offices, amongst the faculty, in administration, and so on, to sort of assemble different parts of it. And while perhaps there was an element of leadership and management in what I was doing to organize all of that, I think a big part of that was also just empowering all the people that I work with to utilize their best resources, to find their voices, and to contribute it to the whole project, which I think came off successfully. So when I think about leadership, I think about that opportunity, right, to uplift my colleagues, to put together something that goes beyond each individual part, and so on. So that was kind of my quick take on the relationship between writing as a process and also how it fits in or connects to particular aspects or definitions of leadership. So anyway, thanks.
Great. Yeah. Thank you. Some of you have kind of touched on this already, but we have an audience here of social work professionals and thinking about the importance of writing and how do you think that manifests in social work profession in particular, the importance of writing, and maybe tie that a little bit to the leadership roles that you have taken on and how writing has helped or supported your efforts as a leader. I can be very patient. Yeah.
So I was thinking about some recent, maybe not as recent, articles about, as Dean Begg, as you mentioned, I'm really very interested in diversity in science and what the knowledge base is, who contributes to it, whose voices aren't there. And although it was not published in a social work article in a social work journal, I really had the honor of writing an article about Latina women in academia and the utter lack of representation of, especially in higher education and higher level positions. And I really was honored to have the opportunity to publish with some of my amazing former students who are now, some of them full professors and tenured professors themselves. And it just occurred to me that it's writing is also about opening doors to other people, giving people opportunities to express themselves as well. And social work is a very broad field. It encompasses, as we know, people of many different walks of life, walks of life and disciplines. And I think that one of the things about social work that is so important is just keeping an open mind, having the the, the perspective of being critical. And I don't mean critical like criticizing, just whose voice is there and whose voice isn't there, and what's the other side of the story that perhaps isn't, you're not reading about it. So that's what came to mind as you were asking this question. And just the whole idea of epistemic oppression, that what's published because of people who don't have opportunities to publish, what is the knowledge base and what's missing. So that came to mind in your question.
Yeah, no, I love that framing of opening doors. It was making me think we didn't we often think of writing as a solitary activity. I think maybe you already said it, Richard, but it's, you often involve other people in it. And you've just opened a door to another way of involving people in the writing and the impact. Anyone else like to add to this notion of the importance of writing to social work leadership in particular?
Well, I think it's so connected to the importance of social work scholarship. And, one of the reasons I became a social work uh, professor is that I wanted to speak truth to power. And I think that, when Columbia introduced the fourth purpose, which is essentially, research that has impact,
Yeah.
to me, like, everybody in the school of social work is working within the fourth purpose. Nobody is approaching problems that don't exist. Everybody's trying to solve real social problems. And you do that through your scholarship. And we put so much time and effort and thoughtfulness and years of work into writing grants, doing research projects, collecting data. And then we kind of hit this fatigue point when it comes time to write. And yet none of it is worth anything if it doesn't get published, if it doesn't get put out there, if people can't see what you found. I was just looking at a spreadsheet today of tables of, parts of a survey that I did that we haven't published yet. And I'm like, nobody knows these findings but me and my colleagues. And if we don't put it to paper, it's like, why did we even ask the questions? And so it's closing that loop of why we do everything that we do, is to make sure that people who need this information, people who can act on this information, have good information, and it's accessible to them. So it's like just so central to our mission.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just briefly contribute to that as well, Heidi? When you were saying that, I kind of drawn a little diagram to help me think it through. With social work in particular, I have definitely had students who may say, well, research or something along those lines isn't why I'm here. I'm here to do the practice. I want to work with the people. Respect that. I'm a licensed clinical psychologist. I absolutely love working with the people myself. My little diagram has like a bidirectionals, that's arrows pointing to each other between practice, learning, writing, speaking, and doing, right? So all of the things that we want to do get refined through the process of doing other things. So even if you think for yourself, what Dr. Allen just said about the research stuff, I don't necessarily want to write that myself. I don't necessarily engage in that type of analysis. That's not for me. Heard, respect for sure. And also, the more we know about what people say about the practice, the more we do that, and the more we think about that, then we can write about and be critical of or supportive of that thing. And then the more we can say, it just all goes into one another. If you stay only within that one silo, you don't get better at the other things either. So that's a note for us as folks who might see ourselves more as researchers or practitioners or administrators. We can't stay in that silo either. We have to really practice the other things to get better at the thing that we want to do. So I just want to encourage folks for whom research may not be that primary cap, that we actually refine ourselves and become better practitioners, better agents of change, the more we can do other things.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Really important. Yeah,
Again,
Richard.
I think I can sort of continue the thought because in my own career, earlier on, my writing began or came out of my practice. I was working uh, in healthcare. I was also in a community-based organization, working with support groups and, starting to write materials for patients, caregivers, for circulation, and then and this is in response to a question that was put in the question and answer box. Starting out with patient advocacy newsletters and so on, and writing pieces, trying to bring psychoeducation to people through various avenues and outlets. As time went by, there was an opportunity, or you sort of feel like, here I am, and I've sort of gathered up all of this, what we like to call practice wisdom. How do I share that? How do I put that all together? And it was a tremendous opportunity through colleagues to be introduced to a publisher and to be asked to write this book, 100 Questions and Answers about caring for family or friends with cancer. And we very intentionally involved caregivers and had them contribute quotes, opening up chapters. We, had an opportunity to sort of survey what were primary concerns, organize them, and connect people to resources through this particular publication. All of which is to say that, again, it's a two-way street. We want practice to inform research, and we want research to inform practice, right?
Yeah.
It's part of our competency, core competency as social work professionals. It's an iterative process, and I'm very grateful that I have an opportunity now to be in a more academic setting, and then eventually, yes, through my students to have this then sort of feedback into the service community as well. So thank you.
Yeah, that's great. If you think of life as a journey, and I definitely do, I also think of writing life as a journey. And I'm wondering if each of you would reflect on your writing life journey and how you found your voice, particularly your voice in writing to lead. Um, Not sure who wants to start. And maybe you're still finding your
I
voice.
think Richard does.
Richard
Go
is
ahead,
starting?
Richard. Get this
Oh,
one.
it's my turn. I know. Okay. My voice is my social worker voice. No question about it. It started, as I just said, with the writing that came out of my practice. And how do I get balance what I know as a professional, as an expert in a particular area, but also create a space where people can take that information, work with it, right? And you can call them, participants, but you can also call them, your audience, right? And to think about, sort of posing questions, asking people to maybe do their own self-inventory so that, you can then give them options to consider,
Yeah.
and so on. And again, to try to encourage agency and self-empowerment. And, through the voice, I guess the voice is, as we teach in social work school, we try to be strength-based when possible. We acknowledge, the challenges and difficulties that people may be facing, but at the same time, it's also trying to create hope and purpose. So I don't know how that gets, sort of encoded into voice, but it's something that, at least in the back of my mind, I try to incorporate into whatever voice I have in my writing. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Heidi, do you want to add anything?
Oh, I'm kind of, when I hear the question, I'm like, what is my voice? Well, I'm wordy. I say, if it can be said in 10 words, I say it in 20, which is, not great for writing. But I guess it's like interesting because I don't really think of it as my voice. I think of it as the voice of the people. Like I am either using quotes or numbers, but I'm bringing other people's voice forward and not necessarily what I think of as my voice. I mean, I have opinions on things, but I don't typically, even in my editorial work, I'm bringing evidence, that comes from people, and they give it the credibility because it's not that I am as a person speaking to, an audience from in what I do. I'm an expert on a topic that has been informed by a lot of work. And that work is really meant to amplify the people who are living in the circumstances. And in the case of like health policy, I'm really trying to amplify the voice of the people who are using healthcare and the experiences that they're having and whether it's working for them or not. And how I write it, I just like, that isn't necessarily, I think of as my voice, is just, me, how I get words on paper to tell that story. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, we're all different how we think about this. Anna, did you have anything to add to that?
My area of expertise is Latino populations in the United States, and I'm extremely interested in immigrant health, acculturation, different paradoxes that exist. And so I would say my voice is grounded in the experience of Latinos, mostly in the United States, but immigrant populations, and it's based on existing, as I was saying before, I feel like I'm being a little bit repetitive, but just questioning whether existing knowledge and frameworks make sense for Latino populations in the US. So I would say my voice is one of questioning. It's does what we are observing make sense? What could other explanations be? And so that's how I approach my work, is just questioning. Does it make sense? What's the alternative way of looking at it? So I would say that's how I approach it.
Yeah.
Just asking.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, thank you. Riana, what about your voice?
Yeah, and thanks, Richard, for playing along, letting me kick it to you first. I know you have important things to say. I just want to make sure you got that. So above my computer right now, there's this word authentic, and I've just made sure that I can see that throughout every stage of my career, even as a graduate student, to be authentic in who I am and what I do. And so I'll start because I think so many of us have talked about writing even what it looks like currently. So a lot of us have to write books or chapters or journal articles. And when I was in grad school, I was writing blogs, right? Like I was practicing my voice early so that when I got to this point, I already had the themes, the taglines, the ability to say what I wanted to say and how I wanted to say it early on. And so I really just want to emphasize that it doesn't have to be at a high level that you're starting. You can really practice. And for so many of you, social media is that tool. Like, what does it mean to have 140 characters to create that concise statement? What does it mean to have text across a screen, a blog? Like, what does it look like to have a 60-second short that's going to get something across more than we could ever think in terms of views or listener or viewership? So just being really mindful that what you're doing at any level is important. And for me, being authentic and having a voice that is consistent across space, what you hear from me is going to be the same from morning to night in a classroom to the boardroom. It doesn't change. I don't shapeshift. I don't mince words. I don't change words for federal governments. That's who I am, and I'm authentic, and you're going to get that. And so practicing that for over a decade has allowed me to be who I am in this moment, for example.
Mhm. Such forethought, really amazing, and great advice in there too. Um, in a moment, I'll start to pick up some of the questions that are in the Q&A box, but let me try another one that I want to ask some of you. Right now, technology certainly is booming. There's AI, there is social media. Um, you just referred to 140 characters, Rihanna, right? And how do you think that these technological advances or influences in our life are affecting our lives as writers? And do you think it's a good thing, a bad thing, or a thing we still got to grapple with? And maybe Anna, I'll pick you to start.
Oh boy, I wish you hadn't picked me to start.
Oh, okay.
I know I'm just going to say that I do not have a social media presence.
Mm,
Um, that was a decision on my part not
mhm,
to have a social media presence. It's just not the way that I personally communicate. And so I've never had the challenge of putting things in 140. It, it's it's just not. We all have our styles, and that's not one that I've done. I
mhm,
admire those who do and who can and who are able to, but I do feel that it's not something that I've been able to get into.
yeah,
So, um,
yeah.
so
You
I
said it
don't
was a
have an
choice.
answer for
It's
you
your
other than to
choice.
say I don't do that.
Yeah, yeah. And that's a fair choice. Heidi, what's your thought on this?
Well, I was a really big user of Twitter back when there was Twitter.
Mm,
And I loved the community. I got to see junior people's work that I wouldn't be able to see normally. I got to engage with them. I think I had so many, it just really built my network of people to be able to participate on that, to disseminate my work on that. And then it became very political, and so I'm on Blue Sky right now, but I have to
mm,
admit I don't go on it very often anymore. And I I read a really interesting essay by James Marriott called "The Dawn of what is it? The Dawn of the Post-Literate Society," and it's kind of speaking to the idea of two things I thought were really interesting. Is like one, when you really have to write like a something that fully expresses your ideas, you see the holes in your ideas. Like, and I experience this when I go to do any kind of paper. I start to write down my ideas, and I'm like, oh, wait a minute, it doesn't quite. Hey, I've got a hole in my logic here. And one of the problems with these short form, Twitter, X, Blue Sky, social media things is that you don't write enough to really expose the holes in your logic, and you write to
mm,
create passion, to create a response, and not necessarily to always make a good argument. So in my personal
mm,
reading, I have shifted to long form journalism, which I'm now really appreciating in a way that
mm,
I didn't used to
mhm.
really get into an investigative journalist, for example's 30-page story about something and feel like
Yeah,
I've really learned it rather than kind of just react to what I
yeah,
see on the social media. And I think part of the problem is algorithms. I don't know who you actually even reach anymore through some of these places, because I think that you're kind of sent to the people who agree with
yeah.
you, and the people who don't agree with you may not even ever see what you had to say. And so I've had kind of a transition over the last couple of years. I'm curious to
Hmm.
hear from others if they have as well.
Yeah. Rihanna, where are you on this?
Yeah, really appreciate Heidi what you just said. So I think for me that I'm kind of in the middle of it, because I'm certainly in a generation that takes to social as a primary way of learning and listening and sharing, and was trained in a very clear, long form and deep research way. So I have to be able to translate and access and listen and think through and to create, to reach certain folks. And so I want to just go back to what I was saying about the three hands kind of model that my lab has. You gotta know how to do the deep work. You gotta know how
Mm,
to write the long thing, and exactly to Heidi's point, you
yeah.
can't process enough. And that's your question, Dean Begg. What has it done to our ability to write and to think. Like, I don't have to tell you, the studies show, if you read the long form studies, that like you're not thinking as deeply. You're not able
Yeah.
to create the synapses in your mind or in your brain are not firing the way that they need to when you're deep and engaged in a longer text. The holes aren't going to be as apparent. You think that you've made the thing when really there's so much nuance or other things that could counter that. But because you've said it quickly and it's viral and it goes out, that feels good. You get reinforced and you want to do that more. So again,
Yeah.
not saying that that's the wrong thing to do. What I would recommend is get deep, know what you're talking about for sure, and then break off from that and say, what are the talking points that we know from the study that I can create an infographic for this social platform, a tweet, if God rest in peace, that platform. But like any of these things, like how can I break off into these different platforms to do what's important there? But if you come from me, know that I have a whole paper that's supporting
Yeah.
what I'm going to say, and it's going to be evidence-based, right? Like it's supported not just by my thoughts or what was trending or critical at the time, but from my empiricism and my
Yeah.
ability to use my skills to deliver that point.
Such great points. So thank you both for emphasizing that sort of the long form, and then like gave us even a little tutorial there, Rihanna, but then distilling that, having that as your starting point, and then distilling that into talking points, but having it to go back to as well. Richard, and what's your thinking about social media and such?
Wanted to ask Dr. Allen. I I know that you've used this phrase in previous conversations, and it has to do with something not being something, but rather being high touch. Does that ring a
Oh,
bell for you?
yeah, that I think the future of social work is not high tech, it's high touch.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I,
that's
I yeah, I honestly I don't know how that pertains like specifically to whether, you
Mhm.
know, to engage in social media, but I think that what we do better than any other, you know, what we do best
Yeah.
is really connect with people, and I think that will always be a human to human experience, and um yeah, that we should lean into that strength that our profession has.
and that's my answer.
Human-centered. Yeah, well done. That's great. I'm going to pluck out a couple of the Q&A. There's too many to cover, but some great questions in here. And some of them, I'm connecting the dots. I think some of them were actually directly or indirectly responding to some of the things some of you said. So I'm going to try to tie you to some of these questions if I could. And so one of the first questions is, you know, when you're writing up your research, and I think this is reminding me of what both Richard and Heidi talked about in talking about case examples, speaking for others through your research. How do you protect confidentiality if you are talking about a social work case study when you're publishing it? Richard, do you want to start?
Sure. If you don't have permission to share, you don't share.
Right.
If you have permission, you still remove any identifying information. You also can alter certain aspects of the case to quote unquote, you know, sort of fictionalize it somewhat while trying to preserve whatever essential point you're trying to make with regard to using a scenario
Mhm.
rather than case examples per se. And oftentimes, I mean, if you can sort of combine a number of different situations
Mhm.
to make that point, those
I
are
see.
just some general strategies that I think um, I've tried to use and other people as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say, yeah, that exactly.
Yeah. Perfect. All right. Thank you. And Rihanna, I think this one is for you very likely. Someone is asking about could you speak more to the sea change is one expression, or the difficulty in getting published currently? What do you think is going on there?
All righty.
Softball. Yeah.
There are I'll say for some of the media outlets that I was used to either being asked to speak on or to
Mhm.
publish for, there has been a shift since the current administration has taken office and what I've just witnessed, I can't speak to it directly, but what I've witnessed is that there seems to be a lot more balanced views. So a lot of the things that I was looking at and a part of was much more liberal. And I will acknowledge that while those articles can still exist, there's a lot more conservative pieces, and that makes it a bit more balanced. So it's much more difficult because the ratio of what was accepted at one point for publication or who they're asking to speak has shifted to cover a more balanced viewpoint.
And is that specifically news media? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
No, go
news
ahead.
Is that sort of news media publications as opposed to academic publishing, or do you see the issues in both?
I haven't witnessed it personally in academic. I have had colleagues who have shared that some of the same sentiments that might regard the language that is being asked to use within grant submissions has also popped up in publications. I have personally not experienced that, so I can't speak to it, but I can certainly say, and I'll if I can, just very quickly, Washington Post in particular, when we submitted something that had certain terms like genocide, we were told we could not use that because at the paper they had not agreed that that was a term that was accurate of what was happening, even if we said the UN termed this thing, like even if we used empirical support to indicate it, they were not allowing it as a publication, and only recently have they started using that term. So it is interesting to see at what point and how it's shifting and what their standards are in relation to the past year.
Yeah, we clearly need to have a good panel with the journalism school maybe on this, but thank you for sharing that. I have two more questions. I'm gonna do something a little weird here, out of order. There's a question I want to see now, but come back to later to give you a second to think about it. But someone has asked a very intriguing question. What is the boldest, bravest piece you think you've ever written, and how'd you find the courage to write it? But before we get there, I want to go back. I want to go to Anna. The students, there are some, of course, students signed in and listening to this today, which is great. And one of them, I think, reacting to this conversation is, well, I'd love to get more involved in research while I'm here. What kind of advice could we give to students for finding a way to get involved in research projects at CSSW?
I would say that if you are interested in any of the work of our faculty, our research scientists, and I say faculty broadly here, we have an amazing group of adjunct faculty who teach a lot of our courses. They are involved in really interesting work. If you have interest in the work of any faculty member, send them an email. Pick up the phone and call them. I think that there's always opportunities for students to get involved. If I could just be completely transparent, the tricky part sometimes is the funding for that work. We pay our students for working on research projects. There might be opportunities for practicum that you could also look into as far as your experiences here. But I would just say reach out and ask if there's any space in a faculty member's lab or a new paper that they might be working on, a grant submission, and just reach out. That's really the best way. So I would say do that, and don't be shy about it. Don't be shy.
I want to underscore that. Just if I could jump in on this one too. I think people have a certain timidity about approaching faculty members, particularly faculty members they really revere and admire. And from the faculty member side, it's really great and flattering and exciting when somebody reaches out to you about the work that you're doing. So I'm not saying you'll get a response to the great email that Anna just suggested every time, but thank you, Dr. Anderson. You won't get an answer every time, but you'll get an answer most of the time. People are excited that you're excited about their work, and so don't hold back on that. All right. Let me turn back to that question, which said, in your opinion, up till now, what's the boldest, bravest piece you ever wrote? And how'd you find the courage to write it? So who wants to start with that one?
I'll start. I
Thank
wrote a
you.
paper about Medicaid stigma and how the stigma associated with Medicaid, how it changed the way that the healthcare providers treated people, and how that stigma led to fewer visits, less use of healthcare, and worse health outcomes, and that it actually,
Wow.
Was as important as having insurance or not having insurance at all. And the reason I wrote it is I did a huge qualitative study on the Oregon Medicaid lottery, and we didn't ask about stigma. It wasn't a question that guided our interviews, but it kept coming up, like that people would try to use care, and somebody would make an offhand comment about, well, you could get your blood pressure checked at a convenience store. Why are you wasting our time? And that these comments, this way that people were being treated, really impacted their use of care and their health. And so I felt compelled to write it. And I think it was bold because there was this idea, if you give people Medicaid, then great, their problems are solved. But it's, the truth is if you make Medicaid a program that's considered lesser than, if you pay providers less and you tell them like this is a stigmatized population, that will come through in the care that they receive, and that will come through in their health outcomes. So like Medicaid alone isn't the answer. Yeah.
Thanks, Heidi.
You see, I can still get fired up about it, even thinking about it.
It's great. It's why you do what you do. Anybody else want to jump down on this one?
Sure.
Thank you.
Anna, go ahead. Okay. Again, I'm authentic if nothing else, so I thank everyone on this call for bearing with me. But in March of this year, I was pretty upset at what was happening at a university that we all are a part of. And I didn't really have things, I felt internally just depressed and anxious. Like I did not know what to do with it. And I wanted to actually talk about this one because to Anna's point around the importance of y'all reaching out to us. It was a mentee of mine, and actually she's a junior in high school, who reached out to me and we just chatted, and she was telling me about a bullying situation she was experiencing in Texas. And I was like, you know what, that sounds an awful lot like an experience that I'm going through in my professional life. And so I wrote a blog very close to the time where I disagreed vehemently with what was going on here, and published it. And I'm dropping it in the chat now for anyone who wants to read it. But it's like that's a professional laying on the line. It's a personal, like I'm saying things about my personal relationship with a young person. There were so many things that were very vulnerable that I did, and that has been by far the hardest thing to write. But oh my gosh, when this young person got it and the response that they said, like they took it to all their friends in high school, like my mentor wrote about me, I'm famous, like and it's like Psych Today, which isn't like the most peer reviewed thing on the planet, but like she was so geeked that she inspired me to write this. So I just want to acknowledge that that y'all can, it's a bi-directional relationship. Like come to work with us, yes, but like y'all inspire us to say what we need to say and get it off our chest and be big and bold too.
Excellent. Thank you. Richard or Anna, do you want to chime in on this one? Yeah, please, Richard.
So I guess I don't know if we're restricting ourselves to public publications. I mean, things that are going out there, or kind of more private, internal kinds of things. Because what came to my
Yeah.
mind were, I mean, things that I've had to write as an administrator, and yeah, in the interest of confidentiality and people and institutions that might or might not be involved in this particular scenario, I'm sort of blending different
Okay.
details here. But I think
Following that
just
advice you gave us earlier to alter.
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think, yeah, you know, just when you have to share some hard information with people, and maybe this is the unpopular
Mhm.
piece here in the question, but um, I think that, you know, even though things might be difficult to hear, people have a right to hear, you know, what went into particular decisions, what we're doing to, you know, work through issues that might come up as a result, and try to engage people in a sort of collaborative venture moving forward and so on. And it's that idea that I think helps me to you know, say the hard things and the things that, you know, are difficult for people to hear. So hope that's not too generalized, and but yeah, just wanted to
Yeah, no, I like
leave it
your
with that.
reaching to different aspects of writing life. So thank you for that. Anna, you wanna add
My
on?
example is not as bold, I think, as my two esteemed colleagues, but what came to mind immediately, many, many years ago, I published with some dear colleagues an article on the Latino mortality epidemiologic paradox. And I remember after it was published, I was concerned about getting emails about it because we were arguing that the Latino mortality paradox is real. It's not due to um, immigrants' hypotheses that have to do with immigration. It appears to be real. And I was really concerned because I was writing in the era and still, where it's still in that era of health disparities. And I was concerned that the feedback would be, well, if Latinos live longer than you would expect, why are we doing research on Latino disparities
Uh,
related to diabetes and other? So
yeah.
I was concerned about that, but thankfully people got the message that it had to do with all cause and not specific causes. So that I remember thinking, oh my gosh, I had a few emails after, and I was waiting to see, well, why should we be doing health disparities research? But
Yeah.
I remember that
Yeah.
vividly.
Yeah.
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 Anyway.
Well, thank you all for sharing, and thank you. We've got less than a minute left, but I want to thank all of our panelists today. Everybody join me. I mean, just loved hearing from you. Loved your authenticity and willingness to share how you think about these things. And as we sign off, I'm just going to go in the order of the screen, and maybe just take 10 seconds if you had a piece of advice for our students who are listening to today when it comes to writing and writing for leadership and social work. What's your one pithy piece of advice to give them as we sign off? So I'm going in order here. Anna, you're first on my screen.
I would say look for collaborators, which
Mm-hmm.
is really important in helping to write for whatever subject you're working on. I have always, almost always, published with collaborators, and it really helps as a student, as a faculty member.
Beyond.
So look for colleagues that can help you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Heidi?
I would say try to find a place that makes you want to write. So I like going to Butler Library on the second floor by the card catalogs, and I'm like just looking around. I'm like, oh, scholarly people are being scholarly here, and that like makes me want to write. It makes
Inspires.
it
Yeah.
less. Oh yeah. So try to make it a little fun if you can.
Great. Great. Riana, what's your tip?
Literally a mix between the both. So find cool places to work with good people, and you don't have to be the one that's doing the heavy lifting. You can collaborate with a more senior person who knows the ropes. They can help you through the first
Yeah.
time you do this.
Yeah. Great advice. Richard, you get the last word since I introduced you last.
I guess to combine everything that everybody else has said, I try to write as if you were talking to somebody, a person you like and respect, and you're in a conversation with them, and that'll get you started.
Yeah. Perfect and well done in short amount of time. The hour has gone by already. It's been such a pleasure spending time with you all. Thanks everybody for tuning in, and thanks especially to Adam and Chin for organizing this and for inviting us to participate. It's a real honor and a pleasure. Thanks everybody.